When my mother-in-law handed us the deed to a dream house at our wedding, I thought we had hit the jackpot. But a week after we moved in, I discovered that his generosity was a trap. I confronted my wife and demanded that we return the house, but her response shocked me. My story with Sarah has always been an example of solid love, the kind that defies time and circumstance. After 6 years together, our wedding was a celebration of what we have built, a promise of the future. But that day, during the reception, a gift changed everything. To my dear daughter and her new husband, announced Janice, Sarah's mother, with a glass raised. Everyone stopped to listen. May your life together be as solid as the foundations of this house. A waiter brought a tray with an elegant folder. Inside, the title of a house. Not just any house, a 5-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood. The guests applauded, impressed. I felt like the luckiest man in the world. I can't believe it, I whispered to Sarah, but his smile did not reach his eyes. It's generous, she replied hesitantly. At the time, I thought it was just nervousness. Little did I know that this would be my first mistake. When we moved, it felt like a dream. I grew up without much, and now I was living in something that seemed impossible. But Sarah wandered around the house like a stranger. Sometimes I found her lost in thought, her gaze fixed out the window. Is everything okay, love? I asked one night. It's a lot, marriage, new house. He didn't talk. I tried to understand, but it all came to light at a dinner at Janice's house. As we ate, she asked, "Have you talked to my lawyer about the contract?" Contract? My voice came out louder than I planned. "Yes, dear," she said, with false sweetness. "The house is still mine, and there are rules, no drastic changes. I work closely, and of course my first grandchild in 2 years." Sarah's silence hit me harder than any words. I knew at that moment that we had fallen into a trap. Back at home, my head was racing. Those words of Janice's echoed in my mind like an incessant clapper. Contract, rules, control. Her gift was not a gesture of love. It was a noose, and we were imprisoned. "Why didn't you tell me about it, Sarah?" I asked as soon as we entered the room. She avoided my eyes, walking around the house as if she was looking for a way out that didn't exist. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I would solve it on my own." "Alone?" My voice rose a tone. "How do we solve a problem of this size alone, Sarah? This affects us, our lives, our future." She stopped in the middle of the room, her breath short. "I knew you were going to look like this. Janice always does this. She gives something and then takes control. It's always been like that. And why did you think it was going to be different now?" Silence. Sarah collapsed on the couch, her shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of the world. For the first time, I saw fear on her face. Not nervousness, not hesitation, fear. "She destroyed my father, Jeremy." Her voice was a threat. "When they divorced, she manipulated everyone. He got my custody, even though I asked to stay with him. And then she made my life hell." My anger gave way to a deep sadness. I knelt in front of her, held her hands. "We need to get out of this, Sarah. Together. You can't live like this, with this shadow over us." She nodded, but her distant gaze told me that running away from Janice would be harder than I imagined. The following days were a mixture of tension and silence. Sarah avoided bringing it up, and I avoided pressuring her. But the house seemed heavier by the day. Every wall, every corner, was a constant reminder of Janice's presence. One evening after dinner, I decided to bring up the conversation. "Sarah, this won't go away if we ignore it. We need to decide what to do." She sighed, running her hands through her hair. "And what do you want me to do, Jeremy?" "She will turn our lives into hell if we return the house." "But isn't it already hell?" My voice came out louder than I wanted. "It controls where we live, what we do, Even our children, Sarah. Do you think that's normal? She closed her eyes, and tears began to flow. You don't understand. I grew up with it. She knows how to manipulate, how to make us believe we have no choice. But we have a choice, I said, moving closer. We can get out of here, start again. It may not be a mansion, but it will be ours. She looked at me, hesitantly. Do you think it's that easy? She's going to chase us, Jeremy. She will try to destroy what we build. My anger was not with Sarah, but with the fear that Janice had planted in her. So let's fight, Sarah. Let's face this together. But I can't do it alone. She looked away, biting her lip. I need time. That night, while Sarah slept, I stayed in the living room, staring at the ceiling. Janice's shadow was not only over our house, it was about Sarah. And for the first time, I began to question whether our love would be strong enough to stand up to her. The tension between Sarah and me was like a thread about to break. But nothing prepared me for the dinner that would change everything. It was a rainy night when Janice called us to talk at her house. Sarah seemed restless, but accepted without discussion. Janice's home was an extension of her personality, impeccable but soulless. She greeted us with her rehearsed smile and calculating eyes. Dear ones, I'm so glad you agreed to come. As dinner progressed, Janice made sure to keep the conversation light, but I knew there was something hidden behind her false warmth. Finally, she put down the cutlery, intertwining her fingers. About the house contract. Contract? I interrupted, my voice steady. Janice smiled, tilting her head. Why, Jeremy, Sarah must have mentioned it. Just a few tweaks to make sure everything runs smoothly. I looked at Sarah, who was pale and motionless. What kind of adjustments? Well, Janice began in a tone of someone explaining something obvious. There are simple clauses. You can't sell the property. You need to keep in regular contact with me. And of course, you need my approval for any decision that impacts the family, including children. My blood ran cold. Children? Janice shrugged, as if talking about the weather. I just want to make sure that my granddaughter or grandson is raised properly. After all, family is everything, isn't it? Sarah finally spoke, her voice trembling. Mom, that's awesome. Janice leaned in, her smile fading. No, Sarah, what's too much is for you to forget everything I've done for you. Either you follow my conditions, or you lose everything. Think about it. Anger took over me. Enough. Sarah, we won't live like this. Janice laughed cold. You have no choice, Jeremy. But at that moment, I decided to prove her wrong. The tension after that dinner was unbearable. As soon as we walked through the door of the house, I turned to Sarah. You knew that all along, didn't you? My voice was heavy with disappointment. She hesitated, her eyes teary. I knew my mom had plans, but not like this. Not like that. Sarah, this is not just about the house. It's about her control, the power she thinks she is over us. She sank into the couch, her shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of the world. You don't understand, Jeremy. She has always been like this. For as long as I can remember, everything has come with conditions, with a price. And I don't know how to face it. I sat next to her, trying to hold back my anger. It's not just you now. That's us. And she's trying to control our future. I will not accept this. Sarah held my hand, her fingers shaking. I want to fight, but she's relentless. It can take everything from us. Then let her try, I exclaimed, determination growing within me. It only has power if we allow it. We have to decide if it's worth continuing in this game of hers or abandoning everything. Silence took over the environment. Sarah seemed caught between loyalty to her mother and a desire for freedom. I need time, Jeremy, she finally muttered. Just a little more time. I wanted to scream, but I held on. I understood that Sarah was wounded by years of manipulation. Still, something needed to change. As she went upstairs to the bedroom, I grabbed my phone. I called a lawyer. I knew that facing Janice would not be easy, but for us, for our future, I was willing to do anything. The war was about to begin, and I didn't intend to lose. The next morning, I woke up with a decision firmly in my chest. Sarah was still in the room, her eyes sunken as if she had barely slept. I knew that it was destroying us, but we couldn't go on like this. While preparing coffee, I heard the sound of notifications on my cell phone. It was a message from the lawyer I had contacted the night before. He confirmed a time to meet me. I knew I would have to discuss strategies, because facing Janice would be like fighting a hurricane. Jeremy, are you going to work today? Sarah appeared in the kitchen, her face marked by hesitation. I'm going to leave later. I have something to solve first. She frowned. Something related to my mother? I paused for a moment, staring at her. Yes, you can't push this with your belly anymore, Sarah. I love you, but I won't let her rule our lives. Sarah lowered her head, her hair falling like a curtain that hid her expression. You don't understand what you're risking. She always wins. Always. Maybe she always won because no one ever had the courage to face her. My voice came out firm, but with a touch of softness. Sarah, this is not just for me. It's for you. For us. She didn't answer, but her eyes were loaded with something new. Doubt, fear, and perhaps a small spark of hope. In the lawyer's office, the conversation was direct. He warned me about the risks and asked me if I was sure. Absolutely, I replied. When I left there, an idea began to take shape. Janice had made a bold move, but I knew that every move had a weakness. I got home decided. The war with Janice would begin with one thing she least expected. Sarah and I, united. Or it would be our definitive end. Sarah was sitting on the couch, with a book open on her lap, but her eyes were not on the pages. She seemed lost, floating in thought. As I entered, I sat down beside her, the weight of the conversation we needed to have sitting between us like an invisible presence. I need your help, I began, breaking the silence. She looked at me, hesitantly. My help? With what? With your mother, he said, his words weighing. If we're going to face this, Sarah, I can't do it alone. She already controls so much. The time has come for us to take that away from her. Sarah widened her eyes, surprised by the firmness in my tone. Jeremy, you don't understand what she's like. It's not just about the contract. It manipulates, distorts everything. It destroys people. But you don't have to carry it alone, I interrupted. Look, I read your diary. I know what she did to you, how she molded you with fear. But it only has power if we allow it. Tears began to roll down Sarah's face. You don't know what it's like to grow up hearing that you're insufficient, that any mistake will cost you everything. I approached, holding his trembling hands. I don't know, Sarah, but I know what it's like to want to protect you. And I'm not going to let her take us. Never. Finally, she nodded, her eyes fixed on mine. What do you want to do? First, discover all the holes in the contract. Then, let's make it clear that this house is no longer the center of our life. If she wants war, we'll give it to her. That conversation was the beginning of something new. For the first time, I saw Sarah get up from the couch with her shoulders less hunched. It wouldn't be easy, but we were taking our first steps together, and that was already a victory. The first thing I did was look for the contract that Janice mentioned so much. Sarah hesitated, but ended up taking a folder from one of the office cabinets. She held the document as if it were a bomb about to explode. That's it, he said, handing over the paper. I didn't even read it properly. I only signed because she convinced me that it was the right thing to do. I took a deep breath, reading each line as Sarah watched, biting her nails. The terms were absurd. Janice not only maintained full control over the house, but had clauses that directly interfered with our personal lives. She dictated where we could work, how we would use the spaces in the house, and even placed restrictions on the future children we would have. This is a prison, Sarah, I said, shaking my head. It's not a contract. It's a chain. She sighed, sitting on the floor. I know, but what can we do? She's smart, Jeremy. There's always a plan, so we need a lawyer. Someone who understands this and knows how to disarm this trap, I replied decisively. This is how we found Dr. Helena Duarte, a lawyer known for facing complex family cases. At the first meeting, Helena read the contract with a serious expression, while Sarah and I explained the whole story. Good, said Helena, finally, taking off her glasses. This contract is full of flaws. Janice cannot enforce these conditions without violating your basic rights as owners. We can invalidate it. Sarah widened her eyes. Can we really? We can and we will, Helena stated firmly. But I warn you right away, Janice will not take this easily. The idea of facing Janice was daunting, but that meeting reignited something in Sarah. For the first time, I saw a spark of hope in her eyes. It was the beginning of a struggle that we could not lose. The days that followed the meeting with Helena were a mixture of relief and tension. For the first time, we had a plan, but, as predicted, Janice did not take long to react. It was a cold morning when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and found Janice, impeccable as always, wrapped in an expensive coat and a smile that chilled to the soul. Can I come in? She asked, but already crossing the door as if she were the owner of the house. Sarah appeared in the room, visibly nervous, her trembling hands clutching the hem of her sweatshirt. So, I heard rumors that you were consulting a lawyer, Janice began, casually, as she slid her fingers across the surface of the coffee table. You know, Jeremy, contracts are complicated, and I'd be devastated if something unexpected thing happened to you. We're not playing your game anymore, Janice, I countered, trying to stay calm. You can't control us. She let out a short, almost condescending laugh. Oh, honey, this is not control. It's careful. You are young, naive. I'm just protecting my investment. Your investment? We are people, not active, retorted Sarah, surprising everyone, including herself. Janice arched her eyebrow, as if she had just heard something inconvenient. Watch your tongue, honey. You know what happens when they challenge me. She stood up, smoothing her coat. Oh, and one more thing. Don't bother going ahead with this one of yours, lawyer. I have contacts that can make all of this much more difficult for you. Think about it. Janice left, leaving a trail of thread in the air. Sarah collapsed on the couch, tears streaming as she shook her head. She's not going to give up, Jeremy. Neither did I replied determinedly. And now it's war. That same day, I decided that I could no longer let Janice play alone. If she wanted a war, she would have to prepare to lose. I looked for Helena and explained what had happened. She's trying to intimidate you, Helena said, adjusting her glasses as she examined the paperwork. But believe me, Jeremy, every castle of manipulation has its cracks. Let's find hers. Helena asked for calm, but my mind was racing. Sarah, on the other hand, seemed torn between hope and fear. What if she really has contacts, Jeremy? What if it can really destroy us? Sarah, I held her hands, staring deep into her eyes. She only has power because you give space to it. But now we are a team. Let's go together. The following days were intense. Helena began a careful investigation, sifting through records and contracts. It was then that she found something. This contract you signed has an absurd clause, he explained, a smile on his lips. It basically contradicts local legislation. If this is taken to a judge, Janice could end up with some pretty serious problems. She always thought she was above the rules, Sarah said, visibly more confident. Armed with the new information, we decided to confront Janice, but strategically. First, a formal ultimatum. We delivered a letter written by Helena, highlighting all the illegalities of the contract and warning that, if she continued to intervene in our lives, we would take legal action. The reaction came quickly. The next day, we received a message from Janice. You are making a mistake. They don't know who they're dealing with. As much as I tried to prepare, something in that message still gave me goosebumps. Janice wasn't the type to back down easily. But for the first time, I saw something different in Sarah, a glow of determination that made her even stronger. And that gave me courage. The weight of Janice's threat still hung over us, but something inside me, and I knew Sarah felt the same, was changing. We could no longer be victims of her mother's manipulation. It was time to face it head on. On the morning of the meeting, Sarah was quiet, as if the very air was charged with electricity. The tension between us and the imminent confrontation made the atmosphere even more suffocating. I felt with every step we took to Janice's house that something was about to break, but I didn't know if it would be the two of us or her. I'm with you, Jeremy, Sarah said, holding my hand before we entered. His gaze was steady, but there was a vulnerability that I couldn't ignore. Janice greeted us at the door, with that forced smile that exuded superiority. But his eyes were calculating, studying our every move. So, what do we have here? Janice asked, her lips stretched out as if she were controlling herself. I opened the letter that Helena wrote, where we mentioned all the illegal points and fallacies of the contract. Janice, I began, in a voice that, even though it trembled, tried to convey confidence. We will no longer tolerate what he is doing. We will return the house, yes. But, the threats and manipulations will no longer work. Janice laughed, but her laughter was faint, as if the unbeatable woman she thought she was starting to crumble. Do you think you can challenge me? I kept my eyes fixed on her, feeling a strength I didn't know I had. You don't rule our lives anymore. It's over, Janice. We don't need your control anymore. She was silent for a moment, but the anger was evident. A battle was beginning, and I knew I couldn't lose. The freedom we were seeking, finally, was within our reach. The room was cold, colder than any other time we had ever entered it. The tension between us and Janice was palpable, as if the air was compressed, suffocating us little by little. Sarah was by my side, breathing slowly, but her trembling fingers showed how fragile she still was, even with all the support I tried to offer her. Janice, on the other hand, was too calm. His eyes, as always, filled with a kind of unhealthy control, seemed to watch me as if he were studying me, looking for loopholes to defend himself. She took a deep breath, and her voice cut through the silence like a blade. You don't think you could just turn your back and leave me out, do you? I gave you a house, and now this? A ridiculous letter and threats? I couldn't back down any longer. The truth had to be told, and if our relationship was going to survive this, we would have to go all the way. I looked at Sarah, who wasn't looking at me directly, but I felt her support, even at the distance of her eyes. It was now or never. Janice, I began, the voice firmer than I imagined. You have ensnared us in your web. He used his influence and our need for stability to bind us. But enough. Enough of this manipulation. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of someone who was beginning to realize that he would lose the game. Jeremy, you still don't understand. I understand everything. My voice was strong, without hesitation. And now we are going to return the house. And so is our life. Heavy silence set in. The words were spoken. And for the first time, I felt like I had control. The weight of the words hung in the air, denser than anything else. Janice didn't react right away, but I saw her purse her lips, trying to swallow her indignation. Her expression changed for a moment. It was as if her world was collapsing in slow motion. Do you think you can challenge me like that? She said, her voice narrowing, almost hissing. You and my daughter don't know who you're dealing with. I took a deep breath, trying not to succumb to the anger that was eating away at me inside. I had suffered too much at her hands to let me be intimidated. I looked at Sarah, who was now closer, but her eyes were still loaded with doubt. I knew she feared her mother's reaction, but at the same time, something was changing in her. It was as if her courage began to emerge, like a flame that was lit little by little. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Janice," I replied, trying to stay calm. "And I'm not afraid of you. But my wife, she will make her own decisions now. No one else will control our lives." Janice stood up, her dark eyes seeming to pierce my being. The rancor overflowed from his voice. "You're going to regret that, Jeremy. You'll see what happens when you challenge your family." I looked at Sarah, and for the first time I saw something more than just fear. There was determination now. She finally approached me, holding my hand tightly, as if to say she was ready to face whatever was necessary. Together, now we would break the cycle. "No, Mom," Sarah said, her voice steady, though trembling. "Now, we're the ones who decide." And for the first time, a sense of relief enveloped me. Perhaps it was the beginning of a new life. The night dragged on like an endless nightmare. The silence after Sarah and Janice's words was overwhelming, like a storm about to burst. I knew that this was the point of no return. What had begun as a gesture of love on Sarah's part had turned into a battlefield, where we were finally fighting for our own freedom. "I can't believe what I'm hearing," Janice hissed, almost breathless. She was visibly shaken, but her control mask was coming off. With each word, she lost more of the power she had over us. But she wasn't going to surrender without a fight. "You don't understand, Jeremy. This is not just about what happened now. That's about everything. About what you destroyed," Janice said, and her voice was heavy with resentment. She seemed to recover a little, trying to regain control, but the anger was palpable, a beast about to explode. Sarah looked at her with a mixture of sadness and anger. "I know you've done this for years, but this has to stop, Mom. I'm not going to be your puppet anymore." I took Sarah's hand, trying to give her some confidence. She was on the front lines of an emotional war that she didn't choose, but I was on her side. And that, as simple as it was all that mattered now. Janice took a step back, as if she was thinking about something. His expression became cold. "You'll see," she hissed. "Never underestimate what a mother is capable of doing." I tensed, feeling that this would be a war of nerves. But now, there was no turning back. Either Sarah and I would take the reins of our lives, or we would remain hostages. The silence inside the house was deafening. Sarah and I, sitting on the couch, knew that something inside us had changed irreversibly. The conversation with Janice still echoed in my head, like a muffled scream, a threat disguised as anger. She had sworn revenge, but, contrary to what we imagined, this would not be a battle between the two of us. The worst was to come. Sarah was distant, her eyes focused on somewhere in the void. I could feel her heart break, a deep pain that I didn't know how to heal. I knew that all that was the result of her mother's manipulation, but still, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened. "Are you okay?" I asked, breaking the tense silence between us. She raised her head, her eyes full of anguish. "I don't know. I don't know who I am anymore." His voice cracked. She fell silent for a moment, then looked at me with a vulnerability I had never seen before. "Jeremy, I just wanted to please her. But now, I see what it did to us." Those words cut me deeply. She was no longer a girl, but a woman who felt too small to stand up to the mother who had always controlled her. And me? I was also lost. Sarah's fight was mine now. I had to be strong for her, for both of us. But Janice would not stand still. She had the power to destroy everything we built, and she knew it. "I'm going to fight for us," I said, my voice steady, sure there was no turning back. "Nothing will separate us, Sarah. I love you." She looked at me, finally smiling, but it was a smile mixed with tears. Now, our fight was just beginning. It was a gray day when the phone rang. I knew, deep down, that it would be Janice. It was no longer a surprise. She was always around, her presence like a shadow that stretched into every corner of our lives. The unknown number flashed on the screen, and for a moment I hesitated. "Answer," Sarah said quietly, her voice strained, as if she already knew what was about to happen. "Answered." "Jeremy, I need you to come here. Now." Janice's voice, calm and sharp, sounded from the other end. There were no greetings, just a command. "I have something important to discuss." My stomach turned. "I won't submit to your games anymore," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've already made it clear. I'm not going back." There was a pause, and then a short, cold laugh. "You still don't understand, do you?" Janice said, the tone of contempt clear. "You and Sarah have no choice. I am the owner of this house, and if you don't do what I ask, you'll lose everything." The threat hung in the air, heavy and relentless. Sarah stood silently beside me, her eyes fixed on the floor. She knew what was coming, but she couldn't tell me anything. I could feel her fear taking over her body, but I could also see the small thread of courage that still remained intact, like a distant beacon. "Sarah, we can't live like this anymore," I said, turning to her, the pressure in my chest growing. She looked at me, her eyes full of tears, but there was a decision there, something that finally shone. "I know," she murmured, her voice breaking. "We will fight." And so, the final battle began. I knew that confrontation would be inevitable, but nothing prepared my heart for the pain that would come. After that call, the tension between Sarah and me increased by the day. It was as if we were living in a minefield, where any misstep could tear us apart forever. The next morning, we decided to confront Janice. We could no longer wait. She had threatened us too much, played manipulation on top of our lives until she suffocated us. I felt that if we didn't take action now, we would lose everything, even what was left of the two of us. When we arrived at Janice's house, she greeted us with that forced smile. "Oh, I'm glad you decided to come, my dears." But his eyes, cold and calculating, did not disguise his anger. "I think you already know what I'm going to say." I stared at her with a coldness I never thought I would be able to show. "You don't rule our lives anymore, Janice." My voice sounded louder than I expected, echoing through the living room. Sarah stood beside me, pale but with a gleam of determination in her eye. Janice laughed, her laughter dry, joyless. "Ah, my dear, haven't you realized that you're fighting a losing battle?" She stepped forward, staring at us with an air of superiority. "Sarah has always been mine, and you'll never be able to change that." It was at that moment that I knew that the war was just beginning. "You'll see, Janice," he said firmly, unyielding. "No one will control our lives anymore." And then, without further words, the battle for our freedom began. I never thought it would come to this. During all the months that Sarah and I were together, I fought my own fears, believing that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. But nothing prepared me for the destructive force Janice had over us. After the confrontation, the tension between Sarah and me did not subside. She looked at me with silent pain, and I saw her lose herself more every day. "Jeremy, it's not that simple," she told me on those rare times when we can talk without shouting. I can't just cut everything at once." My heart was breaking, but my patience was running out. I loved her, but I could no longer live under Janice's control. "So, what do you want? May we continue like this, dying little by little?" The disgust in my voice showed, but it was the only truth that remained. That night, something broke inside me. I saw Sarah, once again, standing in front of the window, staring into space. It was as if she was trying to find herself somewhere far away from it all. I decided that I couldn't wait any longer. If she didn't make a decision, I would do it for both of us. "Sarah, I'm going out. I can't take this anymore. If you can't free yourself from this prison that your mother imposed on us, I'll leave." She didn't say anything. He stood there, motionless, his eyes red from crying. But deep down, I knew this was the last chance for us to save our relationship. Either she took the reins of her life, or we would lose her forever. I dressed in silence, the weight of decision tightening in my chest. He was ready for anything but continue living a lie. The next few hours seemed like an eternity. I was already in the doorway, keys in hand, ready to leave, when I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. My hand hesitated on the latch. It was Sarah. The anguish on his face cut me more than any words. "Jeremy," she murmured, her voice broken. "I can't lose you." That was like a punch in the stomach. The weight of everything we had faced, the betrayals, the silences, Janice's manipulation, everything seemed to have come to an end. "So what are you going to do?" I asked, my voice hoarse, without strength. "Are you going to keep allowing it to destroy us?" Sarah was silent, her tears flowing like a huge river, but her eyes were steady, resolute. "No." She took a deep breath. "I can no longer live in fear of her. I can no longer be held hostage to my mother's control. I love you, Jeremy, and I will fight for us." I saw a strength in her that I didn't know. Sarah was freeing herself, not only from Janice, but from all the fear and guilt that consumed her. It was like watching someone reborn before my eyes. "Let's do it together," I said, my words trembling but firm. "We will build our life without it. I'm with you." And there, at the door of the house, I dropped the keys. All I wanted was her, our love, and the freedom to decide our future. "You and I, Sarah, against the world." She smiled for the first time in a long time, and that smile made me believe again, made me sure that what we had lost could indeed be regained. The sun was setting when we finally entered the small apartment, but full of possibilities. The place was not grandiose, nor luxurious, but it was ours. There were no rules to follow, no one to watch our steps. Just the two of us, rebuilding the life we always dreamed of. "I told you we were going to make it," Sarah whispered, her voice soft but full of conviction, as she placed a plant in the corner of the room. The same plant that, weeks ago, seemed like a distant dream. Today, it was the symbol of our freedom. I smiled, moving closer to her. "We still have so much to conquer, right?" I asked, the warmth of his presence enveloping me. "Yes, but now we know that we are not alone." She looked at me, and in that moment, I realized that she was not only freeing herself from her mother, but also from an invisible weight that she had carried inside her since childhood. The woman I knew had turned into something much stronger, more determined. Slowly, we began to set up our new home. Every detail was a victory, from the simple furniture to the choice of where to put the photos of our childhood. Each piece seemed to fit in the right place, as if we were assembling a puzzle with the pieces that really mattered. "I love you," Sarah whispered, her eyes shining. "I love you too," I answered, and I felt that for the first time in years, we were finally living the life we deserved. Real love, without manipulation, without fear, without demands. And there, with my feet firmly on the ground and my heart pounding, I knew that anything that came now, we would be ready. Let us know what you think of this story and share it with your friends. It might brighten their day and inspire them. See you in the next exciting story.